gonna be good. Good morning and happy Tuesday. My name is Heather and this is Sage and Stone Homestead. It's kind of a yucky, dreary day, but it happens to be a good day to do some planting. We're going to be having some kind of yucky, rainy weather this week, and when that happens, it means I don't have to water, so I'm gonna take advantage of it. So it's been a little while since we stepped foot in the greenhouse, and I have done a lot of housekeeping since we were last in here. This corner was completely overrun with volunteer tomatoes and volunteer melons that died back. And then up here in the center, we had that really amazing tromboncino squash that really did a lot for the little time that it had at the end of the year. Over here are our broccoli and cauliflower rows. They don't look good, and I have some theories as to why they look the way they do. This leaf structure is supposed to be a lot more compact on a broccoli plant, and I don't really like these downturned leaves. There is a little tiny broccoli head trying to form in here, and I think I'm gonna leave it. I'd like to see what these broccoli plants can produce, but they're not the healthiest, so I don't think we're gonna get the biggest heads of broccoli. A couple of the leaves on these plants got a little bit burned when I removed the shade cloth. Around the same time that I took the shade cloth off is when I removed the center plants out of the greenhouse, and so they started receiving a lot more light than they were used to, kind of all of a sudden. And so there are some burned leaves, and these guys, they just don't look good. So I'm not expecting a ton out of them, but I don't have anything else to put here, so I guess I'll leave them and we'll see what they do. See, this head is a little bit bigger, but it's also pretty loose. It looks like these little flowers are wanting to open pretty soon. So this is about the size of the head that we're going to get off of this plant. So it's a little sad, but each one of the broccoli plants still should put out little tiny florets in like the crotch or like the little elbow of where the main stem is and the leaves come out. Sometimes they'll put out little tiny sprouts of broccoli florets out there, and you can get another little harvest. So we'll have to watch and see if that happens. I've got a little bit more hope for these cauliflower plants. They stayed a lot more compact. They still have some damaged leaves, but over the last couple weeks, they've grown really well out of the center of the plant, and they haven't gained any of that awkward length that this broccoli did. So I think that we might actually get something out of this cauliflower. I wasn't really hopeful for it, but now I'm starting to hope a little bit. I was actually talking to my friend Lisa from Yogi Hollow Farm, and I got some really good perspective on the experience of others in their gardens. She was informing me that their growing season is between 70 and 80 days long, which is an extremely short growing season. I think she's in zone 3. We're growing here in zone 7B in southwestern Kentucky, and our growing season is around 180 days long, which means that we have at least 2 opportunities to grow successions of plants, a spring garden and a summer garden. And sometimes we're even able to have a successful fall garden if the stars align. And they just didn't really align for me this year. But I learned yesterday that I need to be grateful for the fact that I get the opportunity to try. So this gardening season, this fall planting that I attempted here, it was a lot of work. And so it is sad that it didn't really come to much fruition, but it's absolutely worth doing every year, if not for the potential of more food harvested and more food in our pantry and freezers, but for the fact that it gets me cleaning out the summer garden quicker. I think it's worth it in just that. So this greenhouse, when it comes to plant for the spring and summer garden, it's basically ready. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of amending of the rows, but most of the clean out is already done, and that's because I planned for a fall garden. So it's not all for nothing. The work still will benefit me in the springtime. But also, the fall garden being a lot less than what I expected, it had me appreciating the fact that we've put in perennials a lot more than I think I would have. I think sometimes perennials can be taken for granted, but behind me I have a green stalk, and in it last year I put strawberries, and I had almost forgotten about them because this area was really taken over by a volunteer tomato. But after I took out the tomato, I saw underneath that some of the little strawberry plants are starting to come back. See here? Got some green down in there. So I've always loved the idea of growing perennials and being able to basically have a hands-off harvest every year, but it's years like this where I know I'm really going to appreciate them and not take them for granted, because I'm really looking forward to when these guys are flowering and when our asparagus starts coming up, and that is really just like less than a handful of months away. So as far as maintenance and clean out of the raised bed garden where the asparagus is, I haven't done any of that yet. So we're gonna do that today, and we're gonna plant some garlic. So all of the asparagus plants have appropriately died back. We have had some really cold temperatures, and that will always trigger the asparagus plants to put that green energy that was in these beautiful fronds all summer down into the crown, and it will stay there and remain dormant, all that energy, until springtime and the days start warming up and the crowns down below the ground will start pushing up new and hopefully more numerous shoots. So a couple years ago we put in 2-year crowns, and so this past year they were 3-year crowns, and next year they will be 4-year crowns. So I really think that this spring we're going to have a really awesome harvest, but in order for me to see and access that harvest, I need to trim these, so I'm going to be doing that today. So now that everything is all cleaned out, it's time to amend the space. So if you've been around for a little while, you know that I love to use rabbit manure in the garden. Rabbit manure is great. I think one of the best things that it can give to any garden space is organic matter for things like microbes in the soil to feed off of, and also it really helps with water retention. Now there are some really great nutrients in rabbit manure, but it's not necessarily the most rich compost that can be used. So I do like to supplement a little bit. So you see this package. This is just what I had left over in my shed from last season. I bought too many of these, and this is what I have to amend these asparagus plants today, and I'm going to show you why I'm comfortable using it on a food plant, even though it doesn't seem to be marketed for a food plant. Now, as you can see, it's organic, and no, just because something is organic does not mean that it's safe for you to consume. So don't get me wrong there, but I read the ingredients that are on this package here, and it says it's derived from feather meal, poultry manure, bone meal, alfalfa meal, green sand, sulfate of potash, and sulfate of potash magnesia. So all of that I have seen listed on my fertilizers that I've bought in the past that have been marketed for vegetable gardens. So I am going to use this today. This is a 3-5-3 configuration. So it has 3% nitrogen, 5% phosphate, and 3% potassium. So it's pretty well rounded, but more focused on the phosphates, which really help root growth. And that's what I've got going on here. Yes, the part of the asparagus plant that we consume really is the top growth. It's the fern. But that root really has to be healthy in order to produce those fronds. So I want to make sure that I'm nourishing them well. So now the asparagus bed is sufficiently amended, and that's literally all I'm going to have to do until this time next year. Now, was that some work? Yes, it was probably about 20 minutes worth of work. So there was some time and a little bit of money invested in amending this bed, but not nearly the amount of time and money that was invested in the failed fall garden that I have. And I'm not being really fair to my fall garden. I did get a little bit out of it, but nothing compared to the work that was put into it. Now, I put very little work into amending these beds, and really it was not that much work to plant the crowns initially either. And these guys are going to be producing food basically with very minimal intervention for several years to come. And I'm growing to appreciate that more and more as the years go by. So I've got some garlic that we're going to be planting today. And this is one of those things that when I see it at our local store, I pick it up. Usually they don't have huge garlic heads like this. And this is the type of garlic that I like to use as seed garlic. Can you see those huge cloves in there? That's what I'm after. So if you plant a puny little clove in the ground, you will get some garlic, but it's probably going to be a puny little head of garlic. And you really can use those cloves and kind of breed up, if you will, but it's just going to be a longer process. So these garlic cloves in here are huge and fat, and they're going to have enough energy within them to produce a bigger head. And so yes, to answer the age-old question, can you grow garlic from grocery store garlic? Yes, you can. You don't necessarily need specific seed garlic. I have grown garlic both ways. I've never noticed a difference when I've used larger cloves like this. These are awesome. This is gonna be good. So when I go to poke this garlic in the ground, I'm gonna be putting it root side down. So on the full bulb of garlic, you have the root side, and then this is the top facing side, and the greens will stick out the top here. This clove was inside the bulb, basically like so, and I want to keep root side down. I'm just going to be poking them in the ground, probably every 3 inches apart over here, and I'm going to put them probably an inch underneath the ground. So this is actually the bed that I planted sweet potatoes in last year. This bed was very, very overrun with rodents by the time it came to harvesting my sweet potatoes. We did get a decent harvest of sweet potatoes. I'm grateful for what we got, but I'm hoping that planting garlic here will send the mice packing. Garlic is a really great herb to interplant in with all of your other vegetables to help deter pests, so hopefully it works for the mice situation. I actually just remembered that I grew some elephant garlic. Elephant garlic is really hard for us to come by here locally. I found a couple heads of it last year, and I decided that I was going to grow it for seed garlic. So all of this garlic, this elephant garlic that I harvested early in the year, is intended to go back in the ground, and now is the time. So we should have quite a few heads of elephant garlic sometime in the summer next year. These have actually started to turn a little bit green, but same thing goes for elephant garlic. This is actually not technically a garlic. This is an allium, so it's a lot more closer related to an onion, but planting is exactly the same as with the garlic that I planted. Except for these are probably going to be 5 inches apart. Can you see the little tiny roots starting already on this? It's ready. You can definitely plant it before you see little roots starting like that, but it's just a good indicator that it's alive and it is the correct time. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Ideally, I would throw a layer of mulch on over this, and I will at some point. I'm just not going to do it right now. I don't think I have an extra bag of mulch laying around anywhere. But that's gonna be that for at least until summertime for this particular bed. That's gonna be a heck of a lot of garlic, and I'm really excited about it. You all probably noticed on the way into the garden today that the Brussels sprouts, they don't look good. They actually look worse than the stuff that is in the greenhouse, but they are not protected out here. And again, weird highs, super low lows, yo-yo type of year, they are definitely struggling. I don't have anything to put in this spot right now, so a lot like with the greenhouse, I'm just gonna leave these and see what they do. A lot of the times, Brussels sprouts don't really get going until springtime, so as long as they make it through the winter, we could still get somewhat of a harvest out of these, so I'm gonna leave them be. I am starting to make my plans for what I'm gonna plant in the rest of this space starting in February. So I have got to get these starts in cell trays in about 2 weeks, and I'll make sure to bring you along.